This video is about Paul Gauguin and Van Gogh and the Masonic connection. Now here we have Gauguin's self-portrait of himself as the Baphomet. So you have the snakes of the Baphomet's belly here, you have one snake going through his finger, you have the apples of Adam and Eve, and you also have a halo. Now this is Gauguin showing his allegiance to a person who he followed, who was called Eliphas Levi, who wrote a book on magic, and who was the leading Kabbalist of the 19th century, and who had a doctrine called "Do what thou wilt be the whole of the law," which was then taken up by Aleister Crowley. And in this self-portrait of himself as the Baphomet, now Gauguin did not believe that Jesus was divine, and he was influenced by the Theosophical Society of Madame Blavatsky. And so Gauguin based this painting. So in Gauguin's mind, like in the idea of the Freemasons and duality, there is no clear difference between good and evil. They're an aspect of the divine itself. And remember that Gauguin was like a hero, a modern art hero of late Romanticism, as he left all his belongings behind, left his wife behind, and then went to live in Hawaii and in the Pacific, where he had sex with underage girls. And he once told a story how for a cheap bit of cloth that you brought with you from France, that these ladies would, be your wives. And so he's the ultimate bohemian figure, Paul Gauguin. And in his paintings he has this kind of uneasy relationship with Christianity. And we have here that Paul Gauguin was a theosophist, a Rosicrucian, a spiritualist, and he was also a Freemason. And he tells the story of when somebody asked him, "Why are you a Freemason?" He said, "Because I saw some fisherman, an injured fisherman, and he was helped by his brothers." And that is the same as Freemasonry. So that's the story he told. Now he was actually born in France but grew up in Peru, and he was from a wealthy banking family. And then he decided to become an artist, and he gave everything up, including his kids and wife. And of course Gauguin went to live with Van Gogh. So here we have Eliphas Levi, and Eliphas Levi was the man who wrote this book, The History of Magic, and he believed that everything was based on occult magic, and he was a follower of the Kabbalah, just like Madame Blavatsky. And these ideas also influenced Nazism. And you can see how the occult actually created modern art, because all the leading figures in the modern art movement in France were followers of Eliphas Levi and his ideas. And so you have the Baphomet here, and you have Paul Gauguin painting himself as a Baphomet. And in this painting by Gauguin, which is a kind of tribute to Van Gogh, you have an all-seeing eye in the sunflower. Now remember that Van Gogh painted the sunflowers for Gauguin, so the sunflower can be seen as a Masonic symbol. And in this book, called Responses to Cultural Crisis, Revelation of Modernism, by Albert Bohemy, who was the leading critic of modernism and its development, reveals to us the essential figure of Eliphas Levi and of secret societies in the creation of modern art. And modern art is a creation of secret societies in order to create their modern world. It is not by accident, it is not a spontaneous movement, it is something that was influenced and planned and then encouraged by art dealers. So art has always been controlled, and from the French Revolution onwards it was controlled by Freemasons, and most artists were Freemasons. So here you have Gauguin painted a number of sunflowers. He also mocked Van Gogh in this portrait, but in a lot of Gauguin's paintings he puts the all-seeing eye in the sunflower. Now Van Gogh himself, when he was ill, was treated by this doctor called Dr. Gauguin, whose son faked many Van Gogh paintings. So there's a lot of fake Van Gogh paintings out there. And Dr. Gauguin was a kind of was a Freemason, and he believed in these theosophical ideas, and he's the one that treated Van Gogh. And it is likely that Van Gogh's brother, Theo Van Gogh, himself was a Freemason, and through that connection he got Gauguin to go and live with Van Gogh. And as I say, the promotion of modern art is not by accident. It has been a plan to try and reflect and then create the modern world. So you needed a new form of art. And here we have a documentary on fake Van Goghs. And watch this.
Another suspected fake that has close links with the Schufenecker family is Vincent's self-portrait with a bandaged ear, now in the Courtauld Gallery, London.
I think it's an absolute forgery. It's made as a forgery. And it's not only the quality of the painting, which I think is very inferior to the other one. If you see how clear this image is, the the head here, the clear eyes. He's red his blood.
So there's a Van Gogh expert saying that the Courtauld self-portrait, which is worth around £500 million, is actually a fake. And even before his death, Van Gogh's paintings were being faked, and this artist called Adolf Schufenecker, who was a friend of Gauguin and close correspondent of Gauguin, started faking Van Gogh paintings. And that Courtauld self-portrait is by him. And you can see the huge cover-up in the art world, because that painting is actually worth around £500 million if it went to market. And so, what I want to show is how, in this video, is how Paul Gauguin here painted himself as the Baphomet. He was influenced by occult ideas, and it is these occult ideas that created modern art. Thank you.